Andre Washington was 38 years old, and until that Sunday afternoon, he believed he was building something that mattered. He owned his own electrical contracting business. He'd renovated his home with his own hands. Every cabinet, every wire, every tile. He had given 7 years of complete loyalty to a woman who kissed him goodbye Thursday morning and told him she was going to a wellness retreat with her girlfriends. She wasn't. While Andre was wiring other people's houses, his wife was 4 states away with her ex, a man she described as ancient history. 12 phone calls, the last one 47 minutes long, placed at 11:23 at night. Camille Washington came home Monday evening expecting to walk through her front door. Instead, her headlights swept across the lawn, and every suitcase she owned was waiting for her outside. What she didn't know was that the bags on the lawn were only the beginning. Andre had barely started. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The kitchen light came on at 6 in the morning, the same way it always did, not because of a timer, but because Andre Washington was already standing under it. He filled his coffee mug at the counter he had built himself. Dark walnut, 42 inches. He had measured it twice, cut it once, and set it level on a Saturday 3 years ago while Camille was at brunch. He ran his thumb along the edge of it now, the way he sometimes did without thinking. It was solid. Everything in this kitchen was solid because he had made it that way. The house was quiet except for the low hum of the refrigerator, a hum he recognized because he had rewired the outlet behind it himself after finding a loose neutral that would have caused problems eventually. That was the thing about being an electrician. You learned to hear what other people ignored. Little sounds, little warnings, things that flickered just slightly off. He stood at the window and looked out at the backyard while his coffee cooled. Behind him upstairs, the shower turned on. Camille came down 20 minutes later, already dressed. She was wearing the linen set she had ordered online last month. Cream-colored, expensive, the kind of thing she called a necessary investment when he had glanced at the total in their joint account. She looked good in it. She always looked good. That had never been the question. "Morning," she said, moving to the refrigerator without looking at him. "Morning." He poured her a mug and set it on the counter. She picked it up, took one sip, and put it back down. Her eyes were already on her phone. "You eat yet?" he asked. "I'll grab something at the airport." She was typing something, a response to someone. "The car is coming at 8. He nodded. He watched her move through the kitchen, the way she always did lately. Like she was passing through it, not living in it. Like the house was a hotel she had gotten used to. The brochure was already on the counter. She had left it there 2 weeks ago. Sycamore Ridge Women's Wellness Retreat, upstate New York. 4 days, hot springs, yoga, digital detox. Her girlfriend group did something like it every year. He kissed her goodbye at the door at 7:58. She offered her cheek. He kissed it, and she was already reaching for her rolling bag with the other hand. "I'll call when I land," she said. "Have a good time." And then she was gone. The sound of her car service pulling away. The quiet settling back into the house like it had never left. Andre finished his coffee. Then he put on his boots, picked up his work bag, and went to build something. Friday came and went. She texted at 10 in the morning. "Service is spotty up here. Retreat center is pretty remote. Don't worry if you don't hear from me much." He texted back, "No problem. Hope you're enjoying it." That was it. That was enough. He wasn't a man who needed constant contact. He trusted her. He went to work, ran a full-day service call, came home, made dinner for one, and watched 2 innings of baseball before falling asleep on the couch. Saturday, he sent a voice note in the morning. Nothing long, just his voice, asking how the food was, telling her about a strange wiring job Kevin had flagged at one of their commercial accounts. The kind of ordinary, easy thing he always sent her. The kind of thing she usually responded to with a voice note back, laughing at something he had said. She responded with a text 3 hours later, having a great time. 5 words, no punctuation. He read them once. Set the phone face down on his workbench. Went back to what he was doing. He told himself the signal was bad. He told himself she was relaxing. He told himself she deserved the break. He was good at building things. He was also, he would later understand, very good at not yet seeing what was already there. Sunday afternoon, he was in the garage reorganizing his supply shelves when his phone rang. Kevin. They talked the way they always talked, easy, casual. Then Kevin mentioned a cookout the night before, and he mentioned, in a tone that was careful enough to notice, that Tasha had been there the whole night. Tasha from Camille's group, the same Tasha who was supposed to be at the wellness retreat. Andre set down the box of wire nuts he was holding. He did not put it down hard. He set it down slowly, the way you set down something you need to think about. Kevin asked how the retreat was going. Andre gave him an answer. Then he hung up, sat on a stool in his garage, and did nothing for 60 seconds. Not because he didn't know what to do. Because his father had taught him that you don't diagnose by panicking. You diagnose by listening. And he was listening. He went inside. The brochure was still on the kitchen counter. He found the number at the bottom and called. 2 rings. A professional voice answered. He told her his wife had checked in Thursday, and he needed to confirm a detail about the stay. Last name? Washington. Camille Washington. A short pause. I'm not seeing a reservation under that name. Do you have a booking confirmation number? No. Could you check under Holloway? That's her maiden name. A longer pause. I'm not finding anything under that name either, sir. Are you sure it was our location? He thanked her and set the phone down on the counter. He stood there for a moment looking at the brochure. The woman on the dock, the pine trees, the clean, unbothered water. Then he went to his laptop. Their cell account was under his business plan. Had been since they got together. He logged in and pulled up her line. Location history. Disabled. She had never done that before. Had no reason to. He moved to the call log. He scrolled back to Thursday morning when she had left. The pattern was there immediately, as plain as a wiring diagram once you knew how to read one. A number he did not recognize. Called the day she left. Called again Friday morning, Friday evening, twice. Saturday afternoon. Once Saturday night at 9. Once at 11:23. That one lasted 47 minutes. 12 calls. 3 days. He sat with that for a moment. Then he opened a new tab and typed in the number. It took him less than 2 minutes. Brandon Price, LinkedIn profile, real estate development company, a Facebook page not updated since last year, a well-dressed man in his late 30s with a wide smile. Andre had heard that name exactly once in his life. The summer before he and Camille got married, she had mentioned it offhand at dinner. A man she used to date before they met. She had kept it brief. It was nothing serious. A long time ago. He had not thought about it since. Had not had reason to. He looked at Brandon Price's face on the screen for a long time. Then he closed the laptop. He did not sleep that night. He did not try to. He went back to the garage and sat in the workshop until the neighborhood went completely quiet. He thought about Camille leaving Thursday morning in the cream-colored linen set. He thought about spotty service. He thought about having a great time. 5 words, no follow-up, 3 hours to send. He thought about 12 phone calls to a man she had described as nothing serious a long time ago. He did not cry. He did not put his fist through anything, though there was a moment somewhere around 2 in the morning where his jaw was tight enough to ache. He breathed through it. He let himself feel the full weight of what he was looking at. And then slowly, the way clarity always came to him, not like a light switching on, but like a dimmer turning up. He knew what he was going to do, not because he was angry, because he was finished. Monday, he moved through the house with purpose. He pulled the luggage from the closet, all of it, her rolling carry-on, her large checked bag, the weekender with the gold zipper she had bought in Charleston, the 3 tote bags on hooks by the bedroom door. He worked the way he always worked, methodically, without wasted motion, without rage. He folded things. He zipped things closed. He carried each bag down the stairs one at a time and set them on the lawn. Neat, complete, every suitcase standing upright with handles extended. Andre went back inside, turned on the living room light, sat down in his chair, and waited for her headlights. Her headlights swept across the lawn first. That was how he knew she had seen it. The car slowed before it even turned fully into the driveway, and it just stopped. Her headlights swept across the lawn first. The car slowed before it even turned fully into the driveway, the headlights moving across the grass and catching the bags in a slow, sweeping arc. And then the car just stopped. Not parked, stopped, sitting half in the street with the engine still running. Andre watched from the window. He could see her silhouette through the windshield, the shape of her head. She wasn't moving. Then her phone lit up in her hand, and his phone buzzed on the arm of the chair. He picked it up. He answered. Andre. Her voice was careful, controlled, the voice she used when she was deciding how to handle something before she knew what it was. What is this? Come to the door. My things are on the Andre. What is going on? Come to the door. He watched her get out of the car, still in the linen set, still the cream color she had left in Thursday morning. She stood on the driveway and looked at her luggage on the lawn, really looked at it. And something shifted in her posture, her shoulders pulling back, her chin coming up. She walked to the front door and knocked. He did not move from his chair. She knocked again. Andre opened the door. He stood slowly and walked to the door. He did not open it. I know where you were, he said. His voice was quiet, even. I know who you were with. You don't live here anymore. A pause long enough that he could hear her breathing on the other side of the wood. That is not. She stopped. Reset. You need to open this door so we can talk like adults. He said nothing. Andre. The careful voice was starting to crack at the edges. This is a misunderstanding. Whatever you think you know. Sycamore Ridge has no reservation under your name, he said. Not Washington. Not Holloway. Nothing. Silence. You had 5 days to explain, he said. You spent them with someone else. That was when the performance broke open. She knocked harder. She said his name 3 times, then called him controlling, then said he was making a scene, then said this wasn't fair, then said the neighbors. And she was right about that last part. Across the street, Mr. Patterson's porch light had clicked on, and 2 doors down, the Garcia's sidelight was on. Yellow rectangles of attention falling across the quiet block. Camille did not lower her voice. She was past that. You don't get to do this? I have rights, Andre, to this house. You can't just put my things on the lawn. I packed them neatly, he said. Every item. Nothing's damaged. That is not the point. He stepped back from the door. He picked up his phone and called Kevin. Kevin answered on the second ring. She's here, Andre said. 10 minutes, Kevin said, and hung up. Camille was still at the door. He could hear her moving back and forth on the porch, heels on the wood planks. She knocked again, twice, then went quiet. When she spoke again, her voice had changed. Lower, softer, the edges sanded down into something that was supposed to sound like reason. Andre, please just let me in so we can talk. I know this looks bad, but you don't have the full picture. He stood very still on his side of the door. There was nothing left to say through a door that was going to stay closed. Kevin's truck pulled up at the curb 9 minutes later. He got out without rushing, put his hands in his pockets, and stood at the edge of the lawn without a word. He did not look at Camille with anger. He just looked at her, steady and still, and that seemed to be worse. Camille stood on the porch and stared at Kevin. Then she turned back toward the door. It took her 11 minutes. When her taillights reached the end of the block, Andre watched them shrink and then disappear around the corner. He stood at the window a moment longer. Then he went to the kitchen, filled the kettle, got the coffee out, and stood at the counter while the water heated. He poured the cup. He sat down at the kitchen table, and he called his mother. The drive to Felicia's house took 22 minutes. Andre knew every turn without thinking. He sat in the car outside for a moment when he arrived, the street still mostly asleep in the gray morning quiet. She opened the door before his hand dropped from knocking. Coffee's ready, Felicia said, and stepped back to let him in. She looked at him the way she always had, the way that saw through rather than at, and she didn't comment on his face or the way he was carrying himself. She went to the kitchen and poured him a cup and set it at the table across from hers. He told her everything. When he finished, the kitchen was very quiet, and Felicia said, I'm going to tell you something I should have told you before. Felicia did not make a sound while he talked. She didn't cluck her tongue, or shake her head, or reach across to touch his hand. She just listened, completely and without interruption, her eyes on his face. When he finished, the kitchen was quiet. She lifted her mug and took a slow sip. I'm going to tell you something I should have told you before, she said. I want you to know I've been sitting with whether or not I made the right call. Andre looked at her. 2 years ago, at Thanksgiving dinner, when everybody came here. She paused. I was in the hallway getting the extra chairs from the closet. Camille was in the back bedroom. The door wasn't all the way closed. She set her mug down carefully. She was on the phone with somebody. I don't know who. I wasn't trying to hear her, but the hallway's not long. She looked at him directly. She said Andre was not where she thought he'd be by now. Felicia's voice was flat and precise, the way she read things aloud that deserved to be heard exactly as they were. That's what she said, word for word. I've held on to those words 2 years. Andre didn't say anything. I told myself I could have misheard, Felicia said. I told myself even if I heard it right, one phone call didn't mean what it might mean. I told myself a wife talks to her friends sometimes and says things she doesn't fully mean. She paused. I was protecting you. Or I was protecting myself from being the one who handed you that. I'm still not entirely sure which. Andre looked down at his coffee. Steam was still rising off it in a thin curl. Phil, he said. I know, she said quietly. He was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, What do you think I should do? Felicia looked at him for a long beat. The rose bushes outside the window were bare this time of year, just thin stems against the gray morning sky. You already know, she said. You've already started. You came here to make sure you're not crazy. She picked up her mug again. You're not crazy, baby. He drove home an hour later. He sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and pulled up their joint bank account, then their secondary checking, then the shared credit card they had opened the second year of the marriage. He was not looking for anything in particular. He was doing what he always did when something felt wrong with the system. He went back to the beginning and read every line. The credit card was clean. The secondary checking showed normal patterns. But the joint checking told a different story. It took him 40 minutes of scrolling before the shape of it became clear. Once he saw it, he could not unsee it. Cash withdrawals spread out so they did not cluster. Never on weekends. Always on days he was running long jobs. A commercial install, a multi-day rewire, a full panel replacement across town. 400, 500, 450, 600. Always a TM. Always cash. He opened a spreadsheet. He entered every one. He cross-referenced the dates against his work calendar still synced to his phone. 22 months of withdrawals. The first one was dated to a Tuesday in March, 2 years and 1 month ago. He opened a second tab and pulled up Brandon Price's LinkedIn profile. Brandon Price had relocated from Atlanta to the city. The date listed was February of that same year. Andre looked at the two numbers, the withdrawal date and the relocation date, and sat very still in the quiet kitchen. The total in the spreadsheet read $14,200. He called Kevin at 7:14 that evening. He didn't lead with the headline. He walked through the spreadsheet the same way he'd walked his mother through everything that morning. In order, just the facts laid flat. When he got to the two dates, Kevin went quiet. Not the kind of quiet where someone is thinking of something to say. The kind of quiet where something has clicked into place that is going to stay there. Say that again, Kevin said. The two dates, Andre said them again. Another beat. Then Kevin said, Give me 2 days. Kevin called back on a Thursday evening. Pendre drove over after sundown. Kevin had a folding table set up in his living room. His laptop was open. Papers were spread across the surface in stacks that looked disorganized, but weren't. Sit down, Kevin said. Kevin had been thorough. Brandon Price, Kevin said, turning the laptop to face Andre, real estate developer. Website, LinkedIn, business address downtown that was technically a shared office suite. Looks legitimate on the surface. Looks like a man with a portfolio. He pulled a paper from the top of the nearest stack. 2 residential properties. First one purchased 18 months ago. Second one 8 months ago. He set the paper down and tapped it. Both funded in part through down payments from an LLC. What's the LLC? BP Holdings Group. Registered with the state. Kevin pulled another page. Formation date. 1 month after Brandon Price moved back to the city from Atlanta. Andre looked at the date. He took out the withdrawal spreadsheet he had printed and folded in his jacket pocket. He set it on the table. The LLC was formed in March. The first withdrawal was in April. Kevin let him sit with that for a moment without saying a word. Then Kevin opened a new tab, Brandon's Instagram, set to public. He had already compiled a separate document of screenshots, printed and organized by date. He posts enough, Kevin said. Not every day, but enough. Restaurants, events, a couple of project sites. He pointed to a photo near the top of the stack. Brandon at a rooftop bar. Skyline behind him. A group of people around a table. This one's from 14 months ago. Look at the bottom left corner. Andre looked. The photo was wide. Most of it was Brandon and two men he did not recognize, smiling at the camera. But at the left edge of the frame, slightly out of focus, two people stood with their backs mostly turned, talking, not part of the posed shot, just caught in the background. The woman on the left had her arm raised slightly, holding a drink. On her wrist was a gold bracelet, thin chain, small rectangular plate with a brushed finish. Andre had bought that bracelet for Camille at a jeweler on 5th Street. 3rd anniversary. He remembered standing at the glass case for 20 minutes before choosing it. He remembered the way she looked when she opened the box. He set the photo down. He picked up the next one, then the next. Kevin had found 11 photos total. Different dates, different locations. In each one, the timestamp matched a period when Camille had told Andre she was somewhere else entirely. A birthday dinner with the girls, a work happy hour, a Sunday afternoon shopping trip. 14 months, 11 photos. One borrowed bracelet wearing a man's public timeline, like a signature. Andre set the last photo down on the table. He put both hands flat on the surface and looked at the spread of papers in front of him. The LLC filings, the property records, the social media printouts, his own withdrawal spreadsheet with its 22 months of steady, patient cash. He was quiet for a long moment. Kevin didn't fill the silence. He leaned back in his chair and waited. She was funding him, Andre said. Kevin said nothing. He let the words settle the way they needed to settle. Andre drove home in silence that night. No music, no podcast. Just the road and the particular quiet that settles in when a man has confirmed the worst thing he suspected and knows exactly what he needs to do next. Camille called the next morning. She was crying before she got a sentence out, not the hard, angry crying from the driveway, but the softer kind that came with pauses in the right places. She talked about mistakes, about the marriage having problems she had been carrying alone, about feeling disconnected. She talked about Brandon like he was a symptom rather than a choice. The language was careful. Andre listened. When she finally ran out of words, he said one word, "Okay," and ended the call. 3 days passed. He went to work. He went to sleep. He did not call Camille. He did not reach out to her attorney. He did not give anyone anything to read. He was waiting. And then a call came from an unexpected direction, from someone who had been sitting on something uncomfortable for 8 months. And what that person said, in the tone of a man tying off a loose thread, changed the shape of everything. Darius called on a Tuesday. Not at Camille's request. That much was clear from the first 10 seconds of his voice. It had the particular texture of a man who had been carrying something uncomfortable and had decided that carrying it alone was worse than putting it down. "I'm not calling for her," Darius said. "I need you to know that." "I know," Andre said. They talked for 40 minutes. Darius was careful with his language. He was a corporate attorney, and careful language was second nature. But underneath the care was something honest trying to find its way out. He confirmed he had not known about Brandon specifically, had not known about the 5 days. But 8 months ago, he had seen Camille at a restaurant downtown with a man he did not recognize. When he mentioned it later, Camille told him it was a work networking dinner, and could he please not bring it up with Andre, because Andre had a tendency to read into things. Darius had accepted that. He said so plainly. He was not proud of it. Andre listened without reacting. Then, near the end of the call, Darius said something in the tone of a man tying off a loose thread, not realizing the thread was load-bearing. She asked me some questions about divorce. What a spouse is generally entitled to. How assets get divided. That was probably a year and a half ago now, maybe longer. He paused. I told her she should talk to a family law attorney, that it wasn't really my area. I didn't think much of it at the time. The line hummed. I don't know what any of this means, Darius said quietly, but I thought you should know. Andre thanked him. He told him he appreciated the call. He said they would be in touch. He ended the call, set the phone on the kitchen table, and sat in the chair where he had eaten breakfast every morning for 6 years. The 5 days were not a mistake. They were not a lapse. They were an audition. Camille testing the exit she had been engineering for 18 months, while Andre tiled the backsplash and wired the new panel and wrote the checks, and believed he was building something that mattered to her. He sat with that for the rest of the evening. Then he picked up the phone and began making calls. Vera Cross's office was on the 12th floor downtown, clean and spare in the way that offices are when the person inside them wants you focused on the work. She was 51, with close-cropped natural hair, and the particular calm of a woman who had seen every version of this situation and found none of them surprising. Andre arrived at 9 sharp with a manila folder, a USB drive, and a 3-page summary he had typed out the night before. He laid it on her desk. Vera read without speaking. She turned pages slowly. When she finished, she set the last page down and looked at him across the desk. How long did it take you to put this together? She asked. About a week, Andre said. The financial records I had access to already. A friend helped with the property research. She nodded once. Then she told him exactly where he stood. Vera Cross walked him through it plainly, without softening anything. The house was purchased before the marriage in his name with his financing. The renovation had been performed largely with his own labor he had documented over 3 years in the form of contractor permits, materials receipts, and work logs he kept as a professional habit. His income had represented the dominant share of the household's financial base throughout the marriage. All of it was documented. The cash withdrawals are a problem for her, Vera said. Not necessarily prosecutable, but in a divorce proceeding, that pattern tells a story. It tells a story about her credibility and about her intent. Any claim she makes about good faith participation in this marriage is going to sit next to that withdrawal log. She tapped the page lightly. Her attorney is going to advise her to tread carefully once they see what you have. She's already made claims about the house. She can make them, Vera said. That doesn't mean they'll hold. Premarital ownership with documented improvement records is a strong position. We'll defend it. He left her office an hour later with a clear picture and a retainer agreement signed. The partnership paperwork with Kevin took 2 days. Kevin already had the framework drawn up. He had been sitting on it for months, waiting on Andre to say the word. They met with a business attorney and walked through the restructuring of Washington Electrical Services into a formal partnership. Equity stakes documented, roles defined, everything filed and clean. It was legitimate. It was thorough. Andre's attorney confirmed it was entirely appropriate under the circumstances. When they walked out of that office, Kevin clapped him once on the shoulder and said nothing. He didn't need to. The letter from Camille's attorney arrived on Thursday. 2 pages, formal language, requesting mediation and proposing Camille's return to the marital home as a condition of good faith negotiations. Andre read it once at the kitchen counter, folded it, and set it aside. He did not hand it to Vera to respond to. Not yet. Instead, he picked up his phone and called Camille directly. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was careful, managed. "Come to the house Sunday," he said. "Afternoon, 2:00. A pause. Is this about what my attorney sent? It's about things that need to be said face to face. Bring Darius if you want. That's up to you." Another pause, longer, the sound of her recalibrating, deciding what posture to take, which version of herself to bring through that door. "Okay," she finally said. "Sunday," he said, 2:00. He ended the call. He set 3 items on the dining room table that evening. Not spread dramatically, not arranged to intimidate. Just placed there the way you'd set out paperwork before a meeting. A printed document clipped at the corner, a manila folder closed, a phone screen up with a voice memo app open and an audio file already queued. Then he waited for Sunday. Camille arrived at 1:58. Andre heard her car pull into the driveway. He recognized the sound of the engine, the way you recognize anything you've lived beside for 7 years. He did not move from his chair. He sat at the head of the dining room table with his hands folded and waited. She had dressed carefully. She had rehearsed the shape of the conversation she expected, the back and forth, the careful acknowledgement of her mistakes, paired with the clear articulation of her rights. She told herself she was ready. She did not know what was sitting on that table. Camille had dressed carefully. A deep burgundy blouse, the kind she wore when she wanted to appear serious but not cold. Her hair was done. Her posture was measured when she came through the door. Shoulders back, chin level, the body language of a woman who had told herself she was walking into a negotiation she could win. Darius stood half a step behind her. He wore a plain charcoal shirt, no tie. His face gave nothing away. He met Andre's eyes briefly when he came through the door and gave a small nod, respectful, careful, carrying the particular weight of a man who already knew too much and was not sure where to put it. "Thank you for coming," Andre said. He said it the way you say it to contractors, cordial, neutral. He led them to the dining room. Camille's eyes moved across the 3 items on the table quickly. Then she looked at Andre and settled into her seat with the careful ease of someone who had decided not to show that she had noticed. Andre sat down across from them. "I'll go through these one at a time." His voice was level, quiet. The same voice he used when explaining to a client why their panel needed replacing. Not unkind, but without space for argument. He slid the printed document forward first. Joint account withdrawals. 22 months. 400 to 600 at a time. Always on days I was running 12-hour jobs. He let her look at it. 14,000, give or take. Started the same month Brandon Price moved back from Atlanta. Camille's jaw was set. She did not look up from the paper. He opened the manila folder. Brandon's public property records. 2 acquisitions. An LLC formed 1 month after he came back. The timeline matches the withdrawals almost exactly. He turned a page toward her. And these are from his social media. Restaurants, events. Dates that line up with the nights you told me you were with your girlfriends. He tapped one photograph near the bottom of the page. He did not say anything else about it. She could see what was in it. Then he pressed play on the phone. His own voice came out of the speaker first, calm and direct. Then Darius's voice, the call moving through its full shape. The careful admissions. The dinner 8 months ago. And then the moment where Darius said, without fully understanding what he was handing over, that Camille had been asking about divorce entitlements a year and a half ago. Darius went very still when he heard his own voice. Andre stopped the recording. He looked at Camille. You weren't having a rough patch, he said. You were running a project. You were deciding whether to trade up while I paid for the option. The room was absolutely quiet. Camille's mouth opened. The rehearsed language came. She could hear herself reaching for it. The marriage had problems. You were never really present. I was lonely, Andre. You have to understand what that does to a person over time. This wasn't just about Brandon. This was about us. I don't need an explanation, Andre said. He said it without heat, without cruelty. He said it the way you close a door. Not a slam, just a firm click of the latch. I needed a wife, he said. You were a tenant with a longer game. Camille stopped. Something moved across her face. Not guilt, not quite. More like the specific humiliation of a person who has been understood completely and has no counter for it. Her script was still in her head, all that careful language, and none of it fit anymore. She looked down at the table. Then Darius turned his head and looked at his sister. He looked at her the way you look at someone you have known your whole life and are only now fully seeing. It was not a hard look. It was something worse than hard. It was sad and certain, and without any remaining room for doubt. You should have just been honest with him, he said, quietly, like something he had been holding for a while. Camille had no answer. Not for Andre, not for the table, not for the 3 items that still sat there, patient and complete, and especially not for her brother. The papers were filed on a Wednesday. Vera Cross moved quickly and without fanfare. She submitted the initial divorce petition, along with a financial disclosure packet that was, by any measure, one of the most organized documents her paralegal had seen in 3 years of working for her. Every withdrawal, every date, every account balance. 2 years of joint statements with the relevant entries highlighted in yellow, clean, and precise. Camille's attorney received the packet that same afternoon. He called Camille that evening. The call lasted 11 minutes. Nobody was present for it but Camille, sitting on the edge of a bed in her sister-in-law's guest room with the phone pressed to her ear. But the shape of that call could be read clearly in everything that followed. After that call, Camille's attorney's aggressive opening position quietly became something else. The letter demanding her right to return to the marital home was not followed up. The language in subsequent correspondence to Vera Cross became measured, careful, the posture of a man who had looked at a paper trail and done the math. During discovery, the withdrawals came into full view. 22 months. A pattern so consistent it looked like a second job. Camille's attorney sat across from her in his conference room 2 weeks into proceedings and used the word credibility 4 times in a single conversation. He did not accuse her of anything criminal. Technically, the money had been in a joint account, and she had the legal right to access it. But the pattern, he explained, was the problem. Judges don't like patterns, he said. Mediators don't like patterns. The pattern made everything else she said about the marriage, the emotional unavailability, the mutual fault, the loneliness, land differently than it would have otherwise. It made her look like a woman who had been preparing, not suffering. He advised her carefully, but plainly, to abandon the aggressive claims. The house in particular was a wall she would not be able to climb. The settlement they eventually reached was equitable, technically fair. It divided what could be divided and assigned what could be assigned. But it was not what Camille had calculated for herself when she was sitting in her car 18 months ago, researching dissolution terms on her phone while Andre was 60 feet above someone's ceiling fixing their wiring. The house sold in 5 weeks. It had always been a good house. Andre had seen to that. 4 months after Vera Cross filed the initial petition, a woman named Simone appeared in Brandon Price's Instagram stories. She appeared the way these things always appear, gradually and then all at once, a corner of a restaurant table, a laughing shot on someone's boat, then a photo where she was centered and tagged, and Brandon's arm was around her shoulders, and his smile was easy and uncomplicated in the way smiles are when there is nothing complicated in the room. Simone had no prior marriages, no ongoing legal proceedings, no paper trail. Camille found out on a Thursday evening through a mutual friend who delivered the information quickly, with an apology attached, as if speed reduced the damage. It did not reduce the damage. Brandon had not called her since the filing. She had told herself he was being careful, giving her space, being smart about appearances during an active proceeding. She had told herself a number of things, and she had been in the business of telling herself things for long enough that she was reasonably good at it. But there was no version of Simone's smiling face in Brandon's stories that could be explained into something manageable. The friend group did not hold a meeting. Nobody announced anything or took sides in any official way. But Priya stopped initiating. Denise, who had always been closer to Camille's side of things, responded to texts with shorter and shorter replies until the replies stopped coming. A dinner loosely planned for 6 weeks quietly dissolved. Andre had known these women for years. He had fixed Priya's outdoor lighting at cost. He had lent Denise's husband his truck twice without being asked twice. He had shown up. He had always shown up. Explanations that had sounded reasonable when Camille was telling them began to sound different when the women who heard them thought about the man they were about. Darius still called. He called on her birthday. He called when their mother had a health scare and needed someone to coordinate follow-up appointments. He showed up when he said he would show up because Darius was that kind of man regardless of circumstance. But the calls were not long. The ease, the shorthand, the specific comfort of a sibling who knew you better than most. It had been replaced by something careful and deliberate. He did not bring up Andre. He did not bring up the settlement. He did not say "I told you so," because he was not that kind of man. He was simply more formal now, like a man fulfilling an obligation he genuinely believed in, but fulfilling it from a greater distance than before. The rental apartment was on the 4th floor of a building, 12 minutes from where she used to live. Clean, good light in the mornings, quiet neighbors. But it was hers entirely in the specific way that meant every bill that came in was hers entirely too. The electricity, the water, the internet, the grocery runs that used to disappear into a shared account and now appeared as individual line items in a budget she was learning at 36 to run for the first time. Nobody had destroyed her. That was the thing she turned over in the quiet of those first weeks. Nobody had launched a campaign against her. Andre had not gone on social media. Kevin had not told anyone anything. The story had moved through the world the way true things do, not because anyone pushed it, but because it had its own weight and its own direction. She had made a calculation. She had decided that a man who built things quietly was not enough. She had exchanged the most valuable thing in her life for 5 days, and a man who was currently photographing someone named Simone on a boat without a single complicated feeling in his chest. She stood at her kitchen window on a Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, and looked out at a view that was entirely her own. A truck read Washington Electrical and Contracting in clean white letters across both doors. Andre pulled up to the commercial site at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning 14 months. After a woman drove away from his lawn with her luggage in her back seat and a warning he never lost sleep over. 4 stories of steel and concrete that needed every inch of its electrical infrastructure planned, rooted, and run by his crew. His crew, 8 men now, 2 vans, a second truck they had added in the spring. This contract, the single largest job Washington Electrical and Contracting had ever taken on, had come through a referral from a general contractor Andre had worked with twice before. Kevin had put the referral on hold just long enough to call Andre and say, "Tell me you're ready for this." Andre had been ready. The truck read Washington Electrical and Contracting in clean white letters across both doors. Andre pulled up to the commercial site at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning and cut the engine. He sat for a moment, looking at the building frame rising against a pale sky. 4 stories of steel and concrete, the electrical infrastructure planned, rooted, and about to be run by his crew. His crew, 8 men now, 2 vans, a second truck they had added in the spring when the workload made it necessary rather than aspirational. Kevin had been after him to expand for 2 years before any of this happened. Andre had kept saying soon, not because he doubted the business, but because he had been waiting for the right time to sit down with Camille and talk through what growth would mean for their life. He never needed that conversation. He climbed out of the truck and pulled on his work vest. The site foreman, a big man named Raleigh, who communicated almost entirely in nods, lifted his chin in greeting from across the lot. Andre nodded back. Simple as that. The house he lived in now was smaller than the one he had sold. That had been deliberate. He did not want more space than he needed. He did not want to rattle around inside walls that held the shape of something finished. He wanted a house he was still working on, rooms that needed attention, a yard that needed time, a structure that was becoming something rather than sitting inside what it had already been. He bought it 8 months ago, a squat brick house 4 miles east of where he used to live, on a quiet street with old oak trees that dropped enough leaves in October to keep a man busy for a full weekend. The kitchen needed new fixtures. 2 of the bedrooms needed rewiring, something he had found during his own walkthrough before he made the offer. A small satisfaction, catching what someone else had missed. He had started with the kitchen. That was how he always started. The place where people gathered. Get that right first, then move outward. Felicia came on Sundays. She brought food she said was just extra from what she had cooked anyway, which was never true, but was always welcome. She sat at his kitchen table the same way she sat at her own, fully, without apology, like a woman who understood that presence was the point. They talked about the business, about the neighborhood, about nothing in particular. Sometimes she walked through the rooms he was still working on and offered opinions he had not asked for and occasionally agreed with. She had never once said, "I told you so," about Camille. Not once. That restraint was, in Andre's estimation, one of the most loving things a person had ever done for him. Kevin came on football Sundays, sometimes with Raleigh, sometimes with one or two of the crew, and the house filled up in a way that felt earned rather than performed. Nobody was managing comfort or curating an image for an audience of one. The people in his house were there because they wanted to be there. Andre had not fully understood until the absence of it how much energy he had spent in a room with a woman who was quietly tallying everything and finding it insufficient. That energy was his now. He used it on the business, on the new house, on early mornings and clean invoices, and a savings account that was growing the way things grow when there is only one person making decisions about where the money goes. He was not bitter. He had put that bag down. He had carried it to the lawn along with everything else, and he had left it there, and he was not in the business of going back for it. On a Thursday evening, 3 weeks after the commercial contract kicked into full swing, Andre was alone in the back bedroom, the one he had decided would be his office eventually, running new wire through a channel he had opened in the wall. Focused and quiet, completely himself in the specific way a man is when nobody needs anything from him and the work in his hands is good work going well. His phone buzzed on the floor beside his tool bag. He glanced down. A contact request. The name read, Diane Okafor Architecture. He recognized it immediately. An architect he had met briefly at a contractor's dinner 3 weeks back. She had asked him thoughtful questions about load-bearing renovation. Real questions, the kind that came from genuine curiosity. And she had listened to his answers in a way that meant she was actually going to use them. He looked at the notification for a moment. Then he set down his wire stripper, walked to the bathroom, and washed his hands clean. He picked up the phone. He had always been good at building things. If this story stayed with you, hit like and subscribe. I've already picked 2 more for you that I think you'll want to hear.